All right, I think we're live. If anyone in the chat can hear me, just push 1. If you can hear me, just push. Can you hear me now? Just give me 1 second. Okay, you can hear me now. All right, yeah. So that's why I have to do a sound check before I even get started, man. Yeah, but thank you all for the confirmation and welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 760, Black Business Talk. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible, and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust. Let me get started. Let me start sharing my screen and we can kick this off. All right, let me know if you can see my if you can see the article on the screen. All right. All right, I got a confirmation that you can see it. All right. All right, tonight we wanted to talk about the state of cannabis in 2023 and the social equity aspect behind it. I think what's happening has been a very big shift in terms of business and especially during Black History Month. Everybody wants to support Black businesses, and cannabis has been one of the high growth industries and opportunities that Black people have benefited from due to policies such as the Social Equity for Cannabis initiative. And so what I want to do is break down a few articles and cover some stuff. There's a link in the chat if you want to get on the panel and actually engage in the discussion. And then we'll just peel up out of here if you don't want to be on the panel. What I'll say here is we've been talking about cannabis since the inception of this channel from a business aspect, the retail aspect, and as well as the cultivation of hemp and other raw materials and resources. And so we're just kind of continuing this conversation so that we can actually keep the audience engaged, keep subscribers engaged, and keep people in the space abreast on what's going on in the space of cannabis. So let me get to this article real quick. We spent a lot of time trying to configure this. All right, this is from masslive.com. In a white-dominated cannabis industry, Worcester's Major Bloom dispensary uplifts Black voices. Let me see if I can zoom in on this. When Ulysses Youngblood opened his Worcester dispensary, Major Bloom, in 2021, it was one of the few Black-owned cannabis companies in Massachusetts. 2 years in the industry is still majority white. In honor of Black History Month, Youngblood is trying to uplift the voices of Black people in the industry. Quote, what we're focusing on are Black brands and Black companies, really highlighting those who have an ownership stake, Youngblood said. That's important because what we've noticed historically and statistically is that as more states turn to legalization in the legal market, is that the percentage of ownership in this space is actually shrinking. In Massachusetts, 68.6% of marijuana established agents are white, while just 6.1% identify as Black or African American, according to the state's Cannabis Control Commission. This is despite the CCC's Social Equity Program, which gives priority licensing review to certified economic empowerment applicants, such as Major Bloom, who have majority ownership by Black, Hispanic, or Latino people, have drug-related criminal offenses on their record, have lived in areas of disproportionate impact for 5 of the last 10 years, or meet other specified criteria. These programs are meant to help those in communities that have historically been disproportionately affected by cannabis laws. According to the ACLU, Black people in Massachusetts are 4 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession than white people. Across the country, Black people are 3.6% times more likely to be charged than white people. Quote, myths and misguided misinformation about cannabis have been harmful to the Black community for decades, Youngblood said. Quote, it's important to amplify Black voices as we continue to reverse the damaging effects of the war on drugs. This month, Youngblood has been inviting Black people in the cannabis industry to share their experience and perspective on infused influence, his weekly radio show on 90.5 WICN. Guests have included Rayvon Williams and Harry Donzo, members of the Major Bloom team. Wholesaler Ray Straker and Christopher Fevery, CEO and co-founder of Your Green Package, a cannabis delivery service. Youngblood said the conversation with Fevery was especially important because cannabis delivery is still very new in the state, and license applications were open exclusively to social equity applicants in 2021. Major Bloom itself launched a delivery service last year. In addition, Major Bloom is offering $5 pre-rolls from exclusive strains, which are packed in organic hemp paper from Bougie, a Black-owned company based in Washington, D.C. A portion of the proceeds will be donated to Worcester's Green Island Neighborhood Center and the YMCA Central Community Branch on Main Street. Youngblood is also using the dispensary's Instagram account to promote Black businesses and brands across the United States. Quote, we have to do our part to uplift other Black businesses and infuse joy into the Black History Month, he said. So this is the type of stuff that we've been promoting for a while now. I think people haven't really caught on to this. They think that you have to smoke all this type of stuff, but there's a lot more involved in the cannabis industry than just smoking. What we've been talking about here is the manufacturing, the cultivation, the supply chain aspect, lighting, aquaponics, solar panels, and variety of things, lights. There's a lot of areas within the supply chain that makes a lot of sense. And we also talked about AI in cannabis as well, artificial intelligence. You know, we have a subscriber and panel contributor called named Engineering Cannabis for that very reason. And he's been talking about this ad nauseum. And I think a lot of people have either not heard him speak on these type of things or have just ignored it. But the point of the matter here is that the cannabis industry has taken off in a way that could be really beneficial to Black people if they actually knew more about it, I think. And I think if more people actually could contribute to the social equity aspect, I think you would see a heck of a lot more of the participation increase. Zone says, Ulysses, that's not complex design. I don't know. He doesn't look like complex, but he definitely shares the same name. So I think this is a really good opportunity for this young brother to be really getting into this. And I think overall, I think this is one of going to be the new growth industries for food, for like food and beverage. I think there's going to be a lot more opportunity that's going to come out of it. It's just a matter of Black folk exploiting it. So I wanted to cover this piece, and then I got a couple more pieces I wanted to cover. There's a link in the chat if you want to get on. Let me get to the next item on the docket. All right, this is from WGBH. Stuck in limbo, cannabis entrepreneurs take on a grassroots fight for equity. In the kitchen of his Roxbury apartment, Oliver Prudent blends together chili peppers, cherries, spices, and a gorgeous helping of THC extract, the signature ingredient in his cannabis-infused hot sauce. Prudent worked behind the soundtrack of a blaring television his 3-month-old son, Alnis, cooing, and under the watch of Zoe, a small black cat and recipe testing supervisor. His cramped kitchen serves as a recipe testing lab for his cannabis-infused catering business. A venture Prudent hopes to someday turn into a brick and mortar establishment. Yeah, show you this image right here. It's actually pretty dope. But the fact he's still working in his kitchen, he says, shows how far he needs to go. And he says a state program meant to help cannabis entrepreneurs like him, called the Social Equity Program, has done little to move him forward. Many of the people eligible for priority status under the program find themselves struggling to find a way in, challenged by layers of bureaucracy coupled with barriers to capital. Prudent says the process of getting an application for a dispensary, securing funding, and actually get a business off the ground has been an ongoing struggle. Quote, for a year now, we've had this social equity status and nobody's actually reached out to see if there's anything we need or given any kind of guidance, Prudent said. Quote, once the status is given to you, you've got to fight for everything else afterwards. It feels like one of those trophy plaques they give out for participation. The state's program, the first of its kind in the nation, was established in 2018 to prioritize communities disproportionately criminalized for marijuana in the state's multi-billion-dollar legal cannabis industry, offering assistance, expedited license application review, and reduced or waived processing fees. The goal is to fast-track entrepreneurs like Prudent through the review process and carve out a place for local residents to open their own pot shops, promising advantages to people from communities directly impacted by the war on drugs, primarily communities of color. Meanwhile, the state's cannabis industry has remained predominantly male and white. 68% of active owners, executives, and employees are white, and 62% are male, according to data from the Cannabis Control Commission, the state's regulatory agency. Out of the roughly 900 people who participated in the social equity program, 29 participants have reached the opening stage, meaning they were approved to open a business. Of those, just over a dozen are still in business, according to state data. State officials say Massachusetts has struggled with outreach for the program, and applicants' lack of funding represents a major hurdle in the next step after application to obtain a license. Quote, people are in the licensing process. They are really getting stuck in terms of opening their cultivation facility or their micro business or their dispensary. Quote, Cannabis Control Commission Commissioner Bruce Stebbins told GBH, quote, their lack of availability to capital has been a huge roadblock. Brockton resident Akinwi Otino was part of the first cohort of applicants in the state program. Nearly 5 years later, she says the process culminated in months of stress and zero progress. uncooperative landlords, flaky investors, overpriced contractors, and an endless maze of licensing and zoning requirements that only amount to dead ends. Quote, there are so many traps. It's so frustrating and demoralizing, she said. I think there are good investors out there. I just don't know who they are. I don't know where they are. Altino dreams of opening her own cannabis delivery service. After years of seemingly insurmountable challenges, she's putting her effort to secure her own license on hold. Oh, I feel like sometimes, I feel sometimes like I'm giving up, but there's just so much you have to be able to tolerate, she said. There's just so many more opportunities to support those people who do not have or do have the money, who do have the ability to get in there and just need support. It feels like we're going to have to be our own support. Black entrepreneurs already face discrimination in securing business loans from banks, a phenomenon exacerbated by the pandemic. Capital is also much more difficult to secure from marijuana operators due to federal that sets aside 15% of recreational marijuana taxes for social equity businesses, estimated to bring in upwards of $20 million per year. Last month, 5 industry experts were appointed by the state for the Cannabis Social Equity Advisory Board, charged with helping oversee how the money is spent. The fund is in its early stages, Stebbins said, part of the sweeping regulation to the state's marijuana industry signed into law last summer by former Governor Charlie Baker. The law also requires regulators to require businesses to include and maintain social equity plans in their agreements with the municipalities, a move to crack down on pay-to-play arrangements and municipal fees required by cannabis operators, a process that disadvantaged local entrepreneurs from communities of color at the onset of legalization. Quote, the fund is intended to help social equity applicants with their businesses to get their doors open, Stebbins said. Hopefully a number of the social equity applicants who might be stalled are going to get over that finish line and be able to commence operations. Some advocates say the move is too little too late. Massachusetts has around 400 licensed cannabis retailers, and operators everywhere are struggling in an oversaturated market in the midst of a financial decline. Quote, people who look like me, who come from where we come from, should have had full participation, but clearly they failed, said Harry Jeans Jock, who runs a cannabis advocacy organization based in Dorchester. They never wanted equity. It was a big gimmick. Recent changes to cannabis laws could hold promise. Jean Jacques says, but there just isn't enough time to wait around and find out what the future will hold. Quote, at the beginning of all of this, I was giving people high fives. I was like, oh, we're all going to be rich, Jean Jacques said. Then when we saw the actual terrain, the capitalism, the corporatism, we're like, oh no, them casting us astray. That empowered us. We created our own hope. Jean Jacques and his brother, David, channeled their own frustrations and failures within the social equity process into a nonprofit advocacy organization called the Big Hope Project. Quote, everything we do is for us, by us, Jean Jacques said. Unfortunately, the community that's already burdened by the historic lack of resources is having to bear the brunt of that and do everything in order to take care of our own community. The nonprofit, founded in 2021, offers what Gene Joss calls the cheat codes on how to avoid wasting time and money, including fellowships and educational programs for aspiring cannabis entrepreneurs, community outreach events, and resources to expunge and seal criminal records. Prudence says he was introduced to Big Hope when the organization was first getting started, seeking information about how to expunge his own criminal record. He'd been charged with illegal possession of marijuana in 2019 on a trip through New York to deliver edibles at a festival, a charge that influenced his decision to embrace the legal market. Quote, I want to show other Black men, especially young Black men, that cook in kitchens and work in restaurants that you can legally make your own products, Prudence said. Take agency in this. This is your industry. This has always been our industry. Prudence had fulfilled the conditions of his release, which required him to get a full-time job or return to school. He enrolled in a culinary program in 2020, using the school kitchen to develop recipes for cannabis-infused baked goods. With the help of Big Hope, Prudence secured a licensing deal that last year with a manufacturing company to produce his first legal market product, the Cherry Trip hot sauce. Interesting. He knows there's still a lot of work to do before he can open his own shop, but he's not giving up, holding on to hope that the social equity program may eventually deliver on its promise to balance the scales. Quote, we really need social equity. I'm not going to hold it to everything that it was cracked up to be, but still, I got this boost, Prudence said. We're going to see what we can do. For right now, that means mixing hot sauce in this kitchen. Quote, this little bottle right here, that's my struggles and pain, sweat, and tears, Prudence said. At this point, you can't stop. So there are some challenges to this. And I think it's a multiplicity of issues here. We don't have enough people who are actually participating in this, as well as we don't have enough leverage to make this more viable in the long term. I think we're on to something, and I think that there are nefarious forces that don't look like us, making sure that we don't actually get anything off the ground. And so I'm not a cannabis consumer, but I can tell you that it seems like a lot of these people have the wherewithal and the talent to actually do something. And I think we should be supporting them in every way possible. Okay. His own statement tells you, you know, where he stands on this. Let me see if I can reread it. Well, let me highlight it here. I want to show other Black men, especially young Black men, that cook in the kitchens and work in restaurants that you can legally make your own products, Prudence said. Take agency in this. This is your industry. This has always been our industry. I don't know what else to say to that other than we've been saying that for quite some time. You know, there's a lot more involved in this that we can actually get ourselves attached to, that we don't, you know, I'm not a consumer, like I said before, but I think from a technical aspect, you know, I'd like to see how we can leverage cryptocurrencies with this. Because capital or access to capital seems to be the big challenge for Black people in this market. Some of the white dispensaries, they look like Apple stores, if you ever walk into them, or like a T-Mobile or AT&T store. Okay. All right, let me jump to the next item on the docket real quick. All right. Next item on the docket is from marijuanamoment.net. California awards $15 million in grants to support local marijuana equity programs. This should be interesting. I'll zoom in on this. California officials on Friday announced that they have awarded $15 million in grants to support local efforts to promote equity in the marijuana industry. The Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, GoBiz, distributed the funds to 16 cities and counties across the state through the Cannabis Equity Grants Program for local jurisdictions. Applications opened for the program late last year. This is part of California's efforts to use the cannabis tax revenue to fund new and existing equity programs for those who have been disproportionately impacted by the drug war. Governor Gavin Newsom's budget proposal for next fiscal year includes $15 million in funding for this program, and we intend to issue our next grant solicitation in October 2023, GoBiz said in a notice. The grants for this fiscal year's awardees range from $350,000 for the San Diego County to $1,996,487 for Oakland. GoBiz started accepting applications for an earlier round of grants under the program in 2021, with a total of $35 million made available for localities across the state. This in the next year's funding cap is set at $15 million. The department separately distributed a round of community reinvestment grants last year, totaling $35.5 million with tax revenue generated from recreational marijuana sales. GoBiz announced last year that they've awarded 78 grants to organizations through the state that will support economic and social development in communities disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. The amount of funding and number of recipients for that program increased from 2021 levels when the state awarded about $29 million in grants to 58 nonprofit organizations through the Cal CRG program. Meanwhile, California Department of Cannabis Control, DCC, announced in October that the state would be awarding up to $20 million in marijuana tax funded grants to universities that carry out research into the cannabis science and policy, including studies on preventing monopolies in the legal industry and securing the genetics of legacy strains. California is also making moves to expand its marijuana market beyond the state's borders, with regulators recently seeking a formal opinion from the state attorney general's office on whether allowing interstate marijuana commerce would put the state at significant risk of federal enforcement action. The request for guidance from DCC is a key step that could eventually trigger a law that the governor signed last year, empowering him to enter into agreements with other legal states to import and export marijuana products. This is really interesting now. Newsom also said last year that he wants to see marijuana federally legalized, in part so that his state's cannabis farmers can, quote, legally supply the rest of the nation. Separately, in the state legislature, a senator recently refiled a bill to legalize possession of certain psychedelics after his last attempt was derailed in the 11th hour of the 2022 session. This is really interesting, okay? And I say it's interesting because what he's trying to do, so California and Massachusetts have similar social equity programs, but not outcomes. Okay, the outcomes are a little bit different, maybe because the demographic makeup and the land and the regions and whatnot. But I would say that where Gavin Newsom gets this right, where California gets this right for that matter, is the willingness to have multiple states that have already legalized and have on the same playing field with California that they can actually sell and distribute in those, a bipartisan agreement basically, or a multi-partisan agreement, but bipartisan for the sake of doing business to business, B2B. I think that this is a really game-changing approach through policy that actually empowers a lot of people. The idea of creating this $15 million in grants to support local marijuana equity programs is actually really good. But I also think that the exportation aspect is going to be even better. I'd be interested in seeing how all of this turns out in the long haul. Yeah, this is really good stuff right here. And because these are multi-billion-dollar industries, for anybody who does not know, these are multi-billion-dollar industries. And so having access to a multi-billion-dollar industry would actually empower a whole lot of folks that look like us in the long haul. Okay. Let me pull up the next item on the docket. California is actually complex designs area, so I'm surprised he hasn't really discussed this as of yet, but he's not around right now. So programs can learn from college sports. Q&A with Ball Family Farms, Chris Ball. Chris Ball, a former professional football player in the Canadian Football League, and now the owner and CEO of Ball Family Farms, a vertically integrated Black-owned cannabis operation based in Los Angeles, is all too familiar with the concept of social equity in the industry. Let me zoom in on this. Ball served prison time for trafficking cannabis from Canada to his hometown of LA before launching Ball Family Farms in 2018 as one of the first Black social equity licensees in the city. From his social equity experience in LA and observations from other social equity programs across California and beyond, Ball says these programs leave much to be desired in the way of supporting minority-owned businesses and helping them reach their full potential. Quote, "We need reform," he says. "I want to be clear that my stance is that we need social equity reform. The city and the state really need to put some energy and some dollars into this and really make this important, because a lot of the people have been negatively impacted by the war on drugs." We heard that many times before. I say it all the time that there are a lot more Chris Balls out there in the industry, and they just need the opportunity. I just want the city and the state to make it fair. Give us a chance. Give us a chance to succeed. Give us a chance to win, and you'll be surprised at how many more social equity businesses emerge. Here, Ball discusses the obstacles that often hinder minority-owned businesses, why social equity programs often miss the mark in removing these obstacles, and what can be done about it. Melissa Schiller, what are some of the challenges that social equity business operators face when launching a business in the cannabis industry? Chris Ball's response: those would be a lack of funds, a lack of tutelage or mentorship. I think those would probably be the main two. I've been given the same metaphor for 5 years now, for 5 years now when I talk about the social equity is what social equity is missing. And the metaphor is when I got my football scholarship to Berkeley. Being an inner city kid and coming from a lower class family without the means, Berkeley accepted me into the school and gave me my scholarship. But they also gave me free housing. They fed me 3 times a day. They paid for all my books. They paid for all my tutors. It was that type of assistance that allowed me to learn at a higher level. And it allowed me to be successful in school. If I didn't have those things, they just accepted me to the college, but didn't provide me with the resources, I would have probably flunked out. There was no way my parents could afford the rent. There was no way that they could afford to feed me. There was no way they could afford to pay for tutors. I think the main thing with social equity, it's already bad enough that we're only allotted a certain amount of licenses in the space, but also it's the way that it's structured, the licensing process. If I'm a social equity applicant and I have to own 51% of what person is going to give me some money, and they only get to own 49%, I'm the controlling member of the money. So they've got to trust me a whole lot. And if I'm social equity, that means I come from a disenfranchised area, which means my education may not be at the level that I need to run a business of that magnitude or even run that type of money and know how to manage it and deploy it. See, I agree with this. I agree with this. I think there should be a business entrepreneurship class at the community college or whatever institutions that offer it, like SCORE or the SBA. I think there should be a class on business management and business administration for entrepreneurs, from the legal framework, grant writing and proposals, marketing, taxation. I think there should be all of these areas that would impact them and prevent them from actually getting a business off the ground and managing it correctly so that it does not fail in the first year. I think that should be the first course of action. Okay. What he's saying is accurate, though. I don't disagree with him at all. There needs to be some sort of mentorship, leadership, and tutelage for these applicants so that when they do maybe link up with someone that wants to help finance, or they are going to partner up, it's, quote, hey, I have the license and I'm social equity. And then the money comes in and there's someone there to say, quote, okay, here's how we're going to deploy the money. Someone's going to get in the middle of those predatory practices that maybe get applied to that social equity applicant. I think funding and resources are something that's still not being given to social equity applicants all across the United States. This is true. What he's saying is absolutely true. MS, can you describe your experiences with Los Angeles Social Equity Program? In what ways did that program help you get your business off the ground? And in what ways could it have provided better support? Chris Ball. With LA, it helped me get it off the ground because they allowed me to have the license for one. I'm very grateful that they even adopted the social equity program. But as far as helping me get it off the ground, there really wasn't any help. That's sad. I think for the most part, if I'm being completely transparent, they really didn't know much about it when I launched back in 2018, when the inspectors came by and they were looking to make sure we were compliant with this and that. They didn't really know what they were looking at this point. And for us, for a person who's been growing and doing this for a very long time, I think I had an advantage. I understood what was wrong with my grow when my inspectors didn't. That would be playing to my advantage back then, because they really had no idea what they were looking at. It gave me time to get my ducks in a row, to dot my I's and cross my T's and get right. I'm not really a fan too much of the program in Los Angeles because I think it's broken. I think it's so broken, sorry. I think if anything, if it's trying to hinder me from being successful with all the things that we've had to go through over the past 5 years and that we're still going through. You know, we've been talking about this for a while now. I think there are people who don't look like us that don't want us being successful at this. For obvious reasons, they, you know. What's going on, Complex? You have something you want to add?
Hey, Mike, what's going on, dude? I was asleep when you got going, man. I just got up a little while ago. My bad.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, this goes back to some early conversations that we were having on the Brain Trust, like 2018 conversations about this. Hell, even Coliseum, right? And here we are in 2023, and this guy is literally talking about the same challenges that we were highlighting at that time, especially when California went fully legal. That was 2018.
Yeah.
Right. And so I can just tell you on the ground here, you know, it's pretty much kind of gone black market in a lot of ways again. You know, that was legalization, the way they rolled it out here, the recreational stuff, it killed a lot of businesses. Not only that, but it made it hard for brothers like him to be successful, right? In the face of, you know, handing over the industry to all, you know, the whales in the industry, so to speak, right? Where does the would-be entrepreneur who's trying to leverage a equity program, mind you, where does he fit in to the scheme of things, right? And as black men, we are very much an X factor in this industry because, we kind of made weed sexy in a lot of ways through hip hop. You know what I'm saying? I mean, people smoke blunts because you know, we used to, you know, brothers was rapping about it all the time. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, we actually have a deeper impact on the cannabis industry than we think. And what you were just saying holds true. You know, there's people that kind of would not want us to leverage our own cachet, so to speak, in the cannabis industry ourselves. They would rather us be the marketers more than anything, you know, for their brands. You know, want you to, you know, functionaries basically.
Yeah. MS asked, what would you like to see included in the social equity program to best support minority-owned businesses in the cannabis space? Chris Ball's response: they need to develop some sort of program where a person like me who's gone through the social equity program and who knows exactly what's coming, who knows the pitfalls, who knows how to get a company off the ground, they need to put together some sort of group of individuals who've made it through the program and have had success, and maybe give us some sort of incentive to want to help these other individuals, whether it's a tax break of some sort or priority down at the city when we need to get some plans or some permits or some fees paid. When I was in school, when a scholarship kid would come, when the school was courting a new athlete, they would get one of the athletes that's been on the team for a while, one of the captains or one of the veterans, and they would give the veteran money and say, quote, go take out the rookie, go take out the recruit that we're trying to schmooze to come to school, come to this school. The players that already been on the team got money out of the deal. The coach that put faith in him and said, here's a couple of bucks, you guys go out and have a good time and get him to sign to our school. If the city and the state were to offer something like that to guys like myself, at the end of the day, yes, I want to see other social equity applicants get into the space, and I want to see them win. But that means that it's going to take that time away from my business as well. So there needs to be some kind of incentive beyond my heart. I'm a guy who has a big heart and I want to teach them, but each one is also not built like me. So if there was some kind of incentive where the city were to say, okay, if you participate in this mentorship program for other social equity applicants, we're going to do this for you in your company at Ball Family Farms, or we're going to highlight you, or you get to go to the city and get your plans and your permits to the front of the line where you get a response in 2 weeks as opposed to 2 months, just something creative like that. These people need help. More than anything, there needs to be funding. This really comes down to money. How's a social equity applicant supposed to get their business off the ground if there's no money? If the city's not offering any financial support, if schools did that, they'd have no athletes. It wouldn't work. And that's why this isn't working. He's absolutely right about this, okay? He's absolutely right. There's ways of going about this. The first thing that the city can do is, one, they can write off the tax, the property taxes that they have to pay. That's one thing, right from the rip. Over the next 5 years, you don't pay any property taxes or any property taxes. And number two, we'll pay your rent for the next 1 to 3 years, depending on what the impact of your record was prior to opening the line of business. If you did a year in jail, if you did 3 years in jail, 5 years in jail, we'll pay based on the time that you have served. Okay, and number three, for me, would be, just opening up grants, in these areas that have been most impacted. I think that process makes a lot more sense. It speeds up the process because access to capital is the biggest challenge here. So,
well, just to to the capital issue, I think one of the problems we're still running into, and in 2023, mind you, no less, is that this is still a cash-based business, right? It's still cash-based. And that is what proves to be the hugest challenge, when you're trying to get capital for this type of thing, And I've always kind of been more of the notion or the idea that this has to be kind of like it has to be an insular sort of supply chain, so to speak, right? So you have to have like a group of Black cannabis entrepreneurs who basically serve different functions but work together cohesively, not just like from a singular entity type of thing. That's where you run into the trouble. There's too many gang-owned operations and stuff to kind of take it on as a I don't know, a capital venture type of thing. Like, I think what we're doing is that And it's not to our fault or anything, but we're still trying to play by the social equity program rules when
Mm-hmm.
the mafia types can literally
Mm-hmm.
just get their shit up and just do things kind of without any oversight. Like I said, so
Yeah.
there's a vast difference between when it is that Black men are trying to get involved in the industry versus other groups.
One thing I think is missing is there's no cannabis trade union.
Right,
I think
right,
that would actually help create more co-ops within it, so that they're
right,
not actually trying to pull their own weight on
right,
individually, where they can actually collectively come together and have a more unionized approach to things, and
right.
so that there's not undermining of other people within the same demographics. So.
Right. Yeah.
All right, let me get to this last piece.
Go ahead.
MS asks, do you think any state or local markets are doing it right? Chris Ball says, I think Oakland, they were the first ones out of the gate to do it. And I think they've got it better. They got a better handle on it than we do down here in Los Angeles. I'm not too familiar with how all the other states' social equity programs are working in detail, because we're here in California. We're licensed in Oklahoma, and we didn't need to be social equity. They were just giving licenses away. I do know there's a program open in Chicago. I have some colleagues over in Chicago, and they complain about the process, about how they are choosing licenses with some sort of score method or merit method. So I haven't really heard many positive things about social equity anywhere besides the fact that we have it, but there's nothing we can really do with it. And so that's part of the challenge. It's all symbolic on the surface, and then when it's time to get a little bit more in depth, it's like, well, okay, well, we did this, and then that's where it ends. And it's like, no, there has to be a whole entire ecosystem to drive this. There is no other way around this.
Yeah.
It has to be an ecosystem.
Yep. Like I said, on its own, it's just almost like they just threw you a bone. You know what I mean? There's no robustness behind it, dude. That's why it's very hard to find Black cannabis entrepreneurs that are doing it, let's say, like on a ground level. I know I got one buddy of mine, like, he runs dispensaries for a larger company. Okay, it's because of him that their dispensaries are successful, and the dude's a grower. So he grows his strains and then supplies the company that he works for. You know what I mean? But see, they would much rather harness your talents in that way.
MS asks, what are some of the Ball family farm goals for this year? Chris Ball responds, Ball Family Farms is in the process of coming up with a new IP for our cultivation practices. We're very excited about it. We're very excited about this new secret sauce that we can figure out where we can push higher quality flower, higher yielding flower. We used to only grow up to 4 to 6 strains, but now I've identified about 16 new different strains. So we're going to change up our methods as far as what kind of strains we put out and when. We're going to put out more niche strains per quarter each year, just to keep our followers and our consumers guessing. Keep them with something fresh, something new to try, a different terpene from profile. We're having some talks about entering into New York City, into the New York City market, the New York market. We've been talking to a couple of cultivators over there who I really like, who want to bring the brand and expand the brand over into New York. There are a couple of really good collaborators coming up this year. Last year in the fourth quarter, we've launched our Ricky Williams collaboration called Ricky, but I got a couple more big ones coming up this year.
Good.
We've been working on our direct to consumer platform now too. Over the past couple of months, hopefully we'll be able to launch with that by summertime. The dispensary game has been disappointing for us because dispensaries get to mark your products up for their margin. And sometimes the margin outflanks a lot of consumers, especially with the state of our economy right now. People aren't throwing a bunch of money around. We want to be able to control our price point. We've gone into some dispensaries and have seen our market marked up 200 to 300%. We want to make sure all of our followers and consumers can get our products at a decent price so that they can enjoy our flower.
I was going to say, do direct to consumer is another way.
Yep. And we make more money too. So it's a win-win. We're trying to cut out the middleman. We're still fighting here. We're still here fighting. We're like the little engine that could. We're still the people's champ when it comes to social equity. We've had to deal with a lot of adversity over the last 18 months with the price compression and how the market is right now. But we're still alive. Things are looking up. Things are getting better. So we hope in the next 3 or 4 months, when we get this new IP in and we get these new genetics running, that we can make a resplash in 2023 with a good marketing campaign and show the world that Ball Family Farms is still here and alive and well. You know, I don't disagree with this brother at all. I think he really hit the nail on the head with what he's talking about. I'm not from California, so I don't know really, you know, how California market is, but I think here we're seeing the same thing that he's talking about. I'm not sure what they were thinking when they created these social equity programs. I think on the surface, it made a lot of sense, but I also think that not having an ecosystem has poisoned the ambitions of a lot of Black folk who wanted to be a part of this. The people who did become a part of it, man, I don't know if they're turning profit, to be quite honest.
Yeah. Not particularly, because look, here's the thing, man. Even the big wigs aren't even turning a profit at this point. The people that are turning a profit are the cats that are doing it on the black market. That's really what's cracking in California right now. Okay, the prices have gone back down, and that's because your cartels and all of them, they just said, all right, enough of this. Okay, because low key, when we first legalized, you know, that's what calmed the streets down. Okay, and so everybody could get this stuff off legally, and everybody was chilling. Hell, that's when Anti-Grav and I were in the business out here. Okay, this is when the rules were different. When they went recreational and they decided to let the big boys in, and then they froze your entrepreneurs out. And the cats that the dudes who were on the street who then converted to a legal business, okay, them dudes went back to the streets with it. And they was like, well, wait a minute, y'all think y'all can really do this the way we know how to do it? Okay. And so over the last few years, the black market took over, and the black market drove the prices back down. So that's why now all of the dudes who lobbied, who paid all those millions of dollars to get California to go recreational, right? So they can come in and they can buy up the business out here. They're the ones that don't lost money.
Yeah.
And your black market growers, they're the ones that are raking it all in. And it's gone back to how it used to be, maybe like in the 2000s. You know, the prices have gone back to the regular prices, so to speak. You know, but then what the brother was saying about people's spending habits with the economy the way it is, stuff like that. He hit on something with going direct to consumer, right? Cutting out that middleman. Like he mentioned, you know, people were marking up 200-300% on what he's taken for the flower at wholesale from them. Okay, so what they make on the sale, is more than what he made on the sale to them.
Right.
Right. So going to direct to consumer route, that's going to be the best bet. Now, I think the primary issue that you run into with that is your marketing mechanism, right? Because I don't believe Instagram, your regular social media channels, where people get, alerts and updates and stuff like that, I don't think that they're open, or I don't think they'll allow marketing of like cannabis stuff as of yet.
No.
So there's a challenge there. But like text message marketing, I guess, and other ways of outreach.
I think on good old fashioned boots on the ground, handing out flyers is probably one of the fastest ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Or just making content, for example. And if that content's targeted, right, it's it's targeted to your area of operation. So like if you're in LA, for example, when you're making, like, say, content on, you can make content around the stuff, right? It's just, you can't directly market it. It's very gray. But if you can make the content and then direct it, and then have some sort of intake form, like, subscribe to our, text to this to get your, get offers and right? Yeah, that's the way he's got to go. Yeah, he's got to go direct to consumer, man.
Yep. We also got B Mays in the chat, man. What to do, man? What to do? He says we got so many black. Yeah, we got so many black market growers here. There's so many haters in the in the legal world, man. They just make it difficult for black men to really get on. Because I see a lot of black women who own dispensaries, and they seem to be flaunting themselves around. It's only when it comes to brothers I see a lot.
I'm about to say, you know what that's about.
Yeah,
you know what that's about. It's more of a, I want to say it's not a diversity hire, it's a diversity something else.
Right? Well, it fits the affirmative action quota.
Right. There you go.
All right, next item on the docket is from CNBC. They were convicted on marijuana charges. Now they're first in line to sell it legally. Tahir Johnson has been arrested on marijuana possession charges 3 times. Now, for the first time in his life, his conviction on one of those charges won't hurt his employment prospects. It will help. Johnson, 39, will be one of the first people with marijuana-related conviction to own and operate a legal dispensary in New Jersey when he opens Simply Pure Trenton in March in his hometown of Ewing, which borders the state capital city. He was among about a dozen in the state to win a conditional license in 2022 because of his status as a social equity applicant.
Conditional.
Yeah. Quote, I checked all the boxes, Johnson said of his qualification for application, and I was especially confident because of my previous arrest. New Jersey is prioritizing granting licenses to dispensaries run by minorities, women, and disabled veterans, dispensaries located in, quote, impact zones or communities disproportionately affected by policing and marijuana arrests, and dispensaries run by people with prior marijuana convictions. It's a part of a concerted effort to redress decades of racially biased anti-drug policies. Johnson fit into all 3 priority categories. Since he won his conditional license, he raised capital, purchased a property, and secured approval from municipal authorities. A conditional license is a provisional license that allows awardees to begin operating while they fulfill requirements for an annual license. The New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission, or CRC, issued the first of 11 of them in May. Since then, about 1/4 of all licensees have gone to social equity applicants, and 16% went specifically to applicants with prior marijuana convictions, according to a recent report from the agency. Quote, it's a full circle moment, said Johnson, whose past is riddled with run-ins with police, overnight stays in jail, and court battles over small amounts of marijuana recovered during traffic stops. These days,
That fool
Johnson
used to
spends
stay
his
riding
time.
dirty.
Yeah. These days, Johnson spends his time hiring staff, meeting with contractors, and preparing merchandise. He expects the business will be profitable. Quote, the generational wealth this will create for my family is surreal, he said. In the third quarter of 2022, there was $177 million in marijuana sales across the state, including $116 million in recreational sales alone, according to data from the Cannabis Regulatory Commission. Lawmakers say efforts that prioritize entrepreneurs such as Johnson are a part of a broader reckoning to right the wrongs of the past and give those most affected by marijuana prohibition a leg up against corporate competitors. Similar initiatives are underway in the other states, including New York, which has reserved the first 150 licenses solely for the people with marijuana-related offenses or their relatives. Quote, there are plenty of people that went to jail or prison for marijuana that have more experience than a lot of these corporate entities, said Trenton Mayor Reed Gostoria. Quote, we wanted to make sure they were able to get into the doorway themselves and be just as successful as a company coming in here from Colorado.
Like what happened in California.
Garcia, who helped introduce legislation for recreational use, said he's thrilled at the influx of marijuana businesses trying to open in Trenton. He hopes that a city can be a model for what a healthy, equitable, legal market looks like. But before that can happen, those most affected by the war on drugs need to be included, Garcia said. Quote, the whole purpose of legalization was to put drug dealers out of business, said the mayor. And now, unless you allow them to get in legitimately, that defeats the whole purpose of legalization. John Dockery has been dealing with, I'm sorry for the noise in the background. John Dockery has been dealing marijuana since he was a teenager in the 1990s. His first charge at 19 for simple possession of significantly limited his job prospects and kept him dealing, he said. Quote, from the beginning of my adulthood, I had to disclose my charge every time I went for a job. And it stopped me from progressing in life, he said. The Trenton native, who last year was among the first to receive a conditional license. At first, Dockery was suspicious of New Jersey's legalization efforts. He had racked up 6 charges over the years, but said this was the norm for Trenton.
Hey,
Quote,
do
I
you know
don't
if
know
they
many-
gave New Jersey weed man a license?
Who's that?
New Jersey weed man. He's been like the dude who like was probably the advocate. And I remember he was big on the internet. This is back in the 2000s, right? He would go up to City Hall and blow a joint right there on the steps and they would arrest him and stuff. But he was doing it to advocate for the legalization. And I wonder if, they took care of him on that end. He's New Jersey's biggest advocate. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. Quote, I don't know many people without at least one marijuana charge, Dockery said. Whether it's a misdemeanor or a felony, everyone here has at least one. African Americans represent nearly half of Trenton's population. In recent years, the state said it was an, quote, impact zone, or an area where marijuana criminalization contributed to higher concentration of law enforcement activity, unemployment, and poverty. In Mercer County, where Trenton is located, African Americans were more than 4 times as likely as white residents to be charged with possessing the drug, despite similar rates of usage. Okay.
Yeah, well, see, when you're white, they'll just tell you to put that out.
Yeah. Dockery said even though he was exactly the kind of applicant the state promised to give priority to while issuing licenses, he was so used to stuff being feeling like it's not programmed for us that the award came as a surprise. New Jersey lawmakers are hopeful that people such as Dockery, who dealt marijuana in the existing illegal or legacy market, will want to join the burgeoning legal market and apply as social equity applicants. For longtime dealer Ed Fortune, the decision to go legit concludes a decades-long saga of arrests, raids, and court battles and stints in prison. Fortune 58 has sold marijuana most of his life and gained fame in New Jersey as a staunch advocate for legalization, running for political office in the state through his legalized marijuana party.
That's him. That's NJ Weedman.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Fortune also goes by the moniker New Jersey Weedman. Began selling weed openly at his Trenton storefront in 2016. His dispensary, New Jersey Weedman's Joint, sits opposite Trenton City Hall. Quote, who wants the threat of arrest all the time, he said. While I was willing to fight, while I was willing to battle, I'd much rather pay taxes and be legal and be considered an ingenious, smart, intelligent businessman rather than a conniving, manipulative drug dealer. Marijuana is decriminalized in the state, and people such as Fortune have largely had their offenses reversed in recent years. While he's ready to join the legal market, Fortune sees some shortcomings to the framework proposed by the Cannabis Commission, such as its ban on dispensaries selling food or drinks of any kind. Makes absolutely no sense.
Whoa. No edibles, huh?
I guess you can't have like a joint and a burger, I guess. I don't know.
Wait a minute. Wait, or maybe I'm getting this messed up. You can't have a place where a restaurant exists where within a dispensary at the same time? Is that what I'm
understanding?
But you need a food and
beverage you need a food and beverage license. And they won't allocate it for you if you have a cannabis license.
Right. Okay.
Quote, I don't know how I can comply, said Fortune, whose dispensary doubles as a restaurant. Nevertheless, he applauds the agency's efforts at paving a way for people like him. He's also moving towards legitimacy, albeit at his own pace. Quote, the black market was here first, so the state's going to have to catch up to me and people like me, he said. But my goal in the end is to hand a thriving legal business to my kids.
See there? Told you, man. Black market will rule the day if it's got to. Because the states have to catch up, dude. Like the states, they take directives from the big wigs who want to come in and try to rewrite the rules, and the people on the street are like, try it.
Right.
And this is what you get right here.
Yeah. But he also needs to, I see B Mays in the chat said edibles are considered food. That's why. But I also think you need a food and beverage license. Like here, you need an entertainer's license to have a TV in your shop.
What?
Yeah.
Yo. No, see, because
they don't want you broadcasting.
I was gonna say out here in a dispensary, if it's a food product made with cannabis in it, it's an edible. It has to be labeled different, so it's not under the jurisdiction of like, what is it? The department that issues food handling licenses, Department of Health, right? It's not under them. It's now under the jurisdiction that regulates cannabis sales because it has cannabis in it. And they're relatively lax for the, that's why nowadays you go into dispensaries, you can't hardly find brownies and shit like that in there anymore. the stuff would be there in a plastic wrapper way past the shelf life and all that kind of shit. And you would think that stuff like that would be under the domain of the Department of Health when it comes to like food handling and shit. That's why nowadays people just make the gummies. They make the gummies and be done with it because it's a candy and it has a longer shelf life.
Yep. Yeah, I just we just don't have an ecosystem, and that's really what it comes down to. Reading all these articles tonight. The social equity piece, that was easy to achieve, but the thing here is if you don't have an ecosystem to really back it up, it ain't gonna work long term, man.
And that they don't have the interest isn't there to help Black men in particular, right? Develop that. Like we were just talking about. You said that was with sisters, what'd you call it? It was an equity thing, or what did you call it?
Affirmative
diversity, action. Affirmative action. Okay. So that aspect of all of this does not also involve the creation of this ecosystem that we're talking about, right? Like they're not going to handhold, and I'll just say Black men particularly, they're not going to handhold us through this. Right. It's looked upon like, okay, you got the license. There you go.
Yeah.
Right. There you go. Hopefully you're successful. Right. That type of thing. There is no kind of I guess you can say like follow up, or some sort of like workshops I think there is stuff like that, but I don't know how applicable it is. I really don't. You know what I mean? This is kind of where. Go ahead, Mike.
No, go ahead and finish, please.
Oh, I was going to say, I think, but I was just to your point. I think that's the reason why this ecosystem that you're talking about is important, because that's actually what's missing.
You need financial infrastructure behind this, and what the original article that I have read on the at the top of the hour was basically. Basically, because it hasn't been federally legalized, that it makes it more difficult for banks to do business. But I would argue that we can actually get around the banking by going into fintech, right?
Oh,
we don't
okay.
Really
I knew you were going to go there. Go ahead.
Yeah, we don't really need to rely on traditional banking anymore. I think that the fintech aspect creates a whole new process behind this that they can't keep up with. Okay. You can still pay taxes, you can still pay sales taxes and stuff like that. But the idea that, you can't use legal tender to, do business in regards to cannabis, because the article that I read before you got on here, I think this is California. Yeah, Gavin Newsom's $15 million initiative for equity. I think that that's a dope strategy that he's doing, that he's working on. But I think that things are too disorganized, right? You have California doing something, you got Massachusetts doing something, you got New Jersey doing something, you got New York doing something, you got Illinois doing something, you got Oklahoma doing something. None of these states are talking to each other in terms of actually creating a end-to-end compliancy framework.
And I don't know if that's ever going to happen, man, because I honestly believe that the states don't have that's not in the, and I'm just kind of taking the macro view. That's not in the best interest of each individual state that has decided they want to legalize, right? Because see, intrinsically, what they understand is that some states will be at an inherent advantage over others, i.e., California, i.e., New York, places like that, Miami, Florida. There's going to be like these destination places that can leverage the market more, especially from the recreational side of things, right? Than other states can. And what other states want to do is just ensure that there isn't some greater framework that puts them at an intrinsic disadvantage over the others. So in that regard, the states are like, okay, we'll just take it upon ourselves to levy whatever taxes we want to levy and run it how we want to run it so that it makes sense to us, right? And then you already know the principal shareholder people are going to get the biggest lion's share of the profits, right? We kind of know how this works, right? But each individual state in and of itself wants to protect its own interests from, say, other states who could have a lot more influence on, let's just say, a national conversation, and then all of a sudden their voices get froze out. And this is truly the reason why this is what is underpinning the lack of national legalization on a Fed level, because the states are looking at each other, and they're looking at like the bigger states, the more populous states, the states that have better climates, bigger economies. And they're like, well, look, we don't want them writing the rules, so that we're essentially a state that has to just produce our shit and then export it out to another state because they have bigger sales than we do, and then our market is at a disadvantage. Or so that's really what's hindering the national conversation. And honestly, we'd have to go back to our 2017 and 2018 conversations about using fintech, particularly blockchain. Okay, using blockchain and tokens and shit like that as a means of a transaction to actually get around this impasse at the Fed level.
Let me read this highlight here. California is also making moves to expand its marijuana market beyond its state's borders, with regulators recently seeking a formal opinion from the state's attorney general's office on whether allowing interstate marijuana commerce would put the state at significant risk of federal enforcement action.
Wow.
So that's where that's where these drones come in, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I can't use FedEx or UPS, I can use a third-party contractor drone company that can take me from point A to point B.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
I know where it's coming. I can track it with an app, GPS wise. I know where to be when it lands, and that drone could either drop it off or it can land and give me the goods, the parcel, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going around the state legally, or I'm going around the federal government legally. But I do imagine at some point there's been some discussion in Washington about moving the scheduling of marijuana around this. And so
they have. And
if he gets a second term, I think he's going to do it then. He seems to be waiting. He doesn't want to put all his eggs in one basket. But
I thought Gavin was probably going to take a presidential run here.
No, not Gavin. Talking about Biden. Biden is talking about
Biden. I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah. I'll get to that article next. But
okay.
That's kind of where we are right now, and I think that we have to be a little bit more innovative in some of these ideals.
I like the fintech side of it, and the angle that engineering cannabis has always been taken on this is that there is a whole other side to this equation that we may not be fully and truly exploring, and that's the tech side of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Where we just covered a couple articles here, kind of covering like the challenges of being, say, like an operator of one of these businesses, dispensaries, stuff like that. The challenges that if you're a grower, getting into the market, securing a location, there's just a lot of shit, man. We seem to have to deal with. Go ahead,
but
Mike.
those are things that cities and municipalities can do on their own. The city can form a small business or minority business equity initiative where they pay for the rent up front for cannabis dealers. They pay for the property taxes up front for those cannabis dealers, the ones who are disproportionately impacted, the ones who are part of the social equity program. I think the social equity program needs, steps A, steps B, step C, steps D, step E. It needs a formal process, and that's where it lacks. On the surface, it makes a lot of sense. once you start getting down to the practical application of it, then it's like, oh, well, that's all, step A through Z is missing. Well, we need to work on step A through Z so that we can actually have a tangible outcome.
Right.
Yeah. All right, this is from marijuanamoment.net. Biden signs equity-focused executive order that totes marijuana clemency actions, calling criminalization a failed approach. This is the other day. President Joe Biden issued an executive order on Thursday that totes the administration's efforts to address the failed approach on federal marijuana policy. The executive order doesn't specifically build on any administrative cannabis reforms. Rather, it's focused on promoting equity within federal agencies and the White House. But the president took the opportunity to connect the issue back to his marijuana actions. Biden issued a mass pardon for people with nonviolent federal cannabis possession convictions late last year and directed a multi-agency review into marijuana scheduling under the Controlled Substances Act, CSA. Quote, my administration has taken action to strengthen public safety, advance criminal justice reform, correct our country's failed approach to marijuana, protect civil rights, and stand up against rising extremism and hate-fueled violence that threaten the fabric of our democracy, the president said in a new order. A fact sheet that the White House released on the executive order expands on the president's cannabis record. The president took bold action to address our failed approach to marijuana, it says. The criminalization of marijuana possession has upended too many lives for conduct that is now legal in many states. The purpose of the mass pardon for marijuana offenses was to lift barriers to housing, employment, and educational opportunities for thousands of people with those prior convictions. Quote, the president also called on every state governor to follow his lead, as most marijuana prosecutions take place at the state and local level. And because this administration is guided by science and evidence, he called on the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Justice to expeditiously review how marijuana is scheduled under the federal law. A separate new White House Domestic Policy Council report on equity efforts also includes a description of Biden's cannabis actions. Biden's new executive order, quote, further advancing racial equity and support for underserved communities through the federal government, directs federal agencies to produce an annual public equity action plan to analyze barriers that underserved communities may face in accessing and benefiting from programs, among other steps. On Martin Luther King Jr. Day, Biden described his marijuana partners as reflection of his commitment to equal justice. Also, at the end of last year, the president granted half a dozen additional pardons, including for a handful of people with marijuana or other drug convictions on their records. Domestic Policy Council Director Susan Rice said in December that the president's broader cannabis clemency and directive for an administrative review into cannabis scheduling have helped address the country's failed approach to marijuana and represent key parts of the administration's remarkably productive year. Meanwhile, a bipartisan group of 29 congressional lawmakers from both the House and Senate has sent a letter to the president in December asking that he formally back federal marijuana legalization as the administration carries out the cannabis scheduling review. While the lawmakers didn't request the Biden take administrative action to unilaterally facilitate legalization, it does underscore an eagerness among supporters for the White House to play a more proactive role in advancing reform. U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier Becerra, who was CC'd on the letter, tweeted a link to a Marijuana Moment article that discusses the president's administrative cannabis scheduling directive. We're going to take a look at what science tells us and what the evidence tells us. Becerra, who has a considerable record supporting cannabis reform as a congressman and as California's Attorney General, said at the recent overdose prevention event, that will guide what we do, and we hope that we will guide what the federal government does. Following the president's October announcement, the secretary said that the department would work as quickly as we can to carry out the scientific review. And he's already discussed the issue with the head of the Food and Drug Administration to that end. Gupta said previously that the president's actions was historic, adding that there are clearly medical benefits of cannabis. Like Health and Human Services, DOJ has similarly committed to quickly carrying out the separate scheduling review the president directed, which could result in a recommendation to place cannabis in a lower schedule or remove it altogether, effectively legalizing the plant under federal law.
They did it with hemp. Might as well.
Yep. The president also officially signed marijuana research bill into law in December, making history by enacting the first piece of standalone federal cannabis reform legislation in U.S. history. A series of polls have shown that Americans strongly support the president's pardon action, and they also don't think that marijuana should be federally classified as a Schedule I drug.
See, if you do that, then there's no conversation about the Fed.
Yeah.
If you do that.
Yeah. That's why I don't think this is going to take place in 2023 or 2024, but I do see it happening if he gets a second term. I think he's going to go all the way with it.
I mean, at some point, somebody's going to have to.
Well, the other people on the side won't do it, but he wants to leave a legacy behind on this. See, the thing here is this, politically speaking, he wants to raise the bar so high that the next president, the next person who takes office won't be able to even meet or exceed what the way he set the bar. And so doing something like this, will kind of set him in the same venue as Carter, as Jimmy Carter. So he wants to be above that.
I mean, I guess for self-gratification reasons, right? I could see that being the case, but we're far behind being a global leader in this, right? I think that's the issue right now. I think Canada's still kicking ass in terms of global exports and being essentially the world's leader in this market. I also want to say, I think it's either Thailand or one of those South Asian countries, right? They have a huge export market to Europe. You know what I mean? And what we're doing here is we're dealing with petty politics when it comes to a simple plant, essentially, right? Because the demonization of it has been ingrained in American society and American culture so long that it's hard to separate that from the global markets.
One of the areas I think could be, even at the community college level or at the HBCU level, I think, somewhere like Tuskegee University could potentially have an agricultural program around cannabis.
I mean, I think that's really where it needs to go.
Yeah, and get federal funding for it, and really, although in the South they're a little bit more, they're a little bit more strict. But the thing here is, once you make cannabis a part of the agricultural conversation, it starts to change.
Yeah.
it starts to change the energy in the room, because as it stands right now, you would think cannabis was a poisonous plant or something like that, or poisonous product. And I think what's happening here is that the politicization around cannabis has hurt any conversation with a lot of elected officials.
Meanwhile, countries like Israel, I mean, they're stacking patents on cannabis, right? They don't seem to have an issue with looking at the medical efficacy, right? And what could be utilized by the plant, the different compounds, terpenes, right? All these, countries like them, in Canada, they don't have an issue, seemingly, right? It's especially with the US, which I really don't understand. As much weed is floating around here, why there's not more of a concerted effort to compete on the clinical research side of things, to open up that side of the pharmaceuticals market. Maybe there's in the upper chambers of government, maybe you do have your what is it, the AMA, American Medical Association people, and your FDA people. Maybe because of them, they may actually be creating an impasse for this, right? And this is kind of where this is institutional when it comes to our own government, right? They're kind of blinded from the global market and not looking at what other countries are doing, right? To set themselves up to own us when it comes to this industry. Yeah,
you would think Home Depot and the supply chain vendors, who want to sell dirt, who want to sell manure, and who want to sell plant pots and stuff like that, they would have a vested interest in this too.
Dude, what about the portable greenhouses, LED lighting, ballasts?
Yeah.
They would love to sell that kind of stuff. Dude, think about how many people would, instead of sniffing around on the internet, right, and looking at Amazon reviews, trying to buy them a little, grow tent or something, they just go right down to their Lowe's or Home Depot. They got them on display. They got like a whole salesperson who specializes in stuff, right? You would think that you would open it up even for the sake of your own companies like your Lowe's and your Home Depots that actually sell and provide these types of products to people, gardeners, people who, landscapers, stuff like that. Those type of products. Yeah, those type of products are shovels. Adjacent. Yeah, all that shit, the dirt, nutrients.
Yep, a hoe.
Hi-yo.
Hey-o.
What about like hydroponic equipment?
I said all that earlier when I first started the stream, that there's a supply chain aspect to this that is missing from the conversation. A supply chain aspect, that's a multi-million-dollar, if not billion-dollar industry in itself. Yeah. I mean, you tell a black man that, about the supply chain, say, there's hoes involved in this. Oh, we out here, dog. We out here.
We out here.
The gynocracy. Oh my
we
God.
Out here.
Be walking in and out of Home Depot. You back again? Yo, man, I keep
coming right?
back from these hoes, man. These hoes keep calling me, man.
Yo, these hoes keep calling.
Yeah. Unbelievable, man. Shonda put this in the chat. Thank you, Shonda, for posting this from Southern University, Agricultural and Mechanical College. Southern becomes the first HBCU to launch THC line of medical marijuana products.
Get out. Wow.
The Southern University Agricultural Research and Extension Center, part of Southern University system, together with Alera Holistic Healthcare, today became the nation's first historically Black university to launch its own THC medical cannabis products. The university holds one of 2 cannabis licenses in the state of Louisiana. The launch of this historic brand, called IO, comes on the heels of Louisiana's unprecedented extension in June of its own medical marijuana program.
So the school is in on the game.
That's where my head was initially.
Damn.
Like, how come the Aggies, the agricultural mechanical institutions, aren't applying for grants from the USDA or something like that, or the Farmers Association, something like that, right? Delivering remarks today at the press conference held on the Southern Baton Rouge campus were Ray L. Belton, Southern University System President and Chancellor of Southern University Baton Rouge, Dominique Rutledge, Chairman of the Southern University System Board of Supervisors, Orlando McMeans, Chancellor of the Ag Center, and Joanna Snowden, Director of the Ag Center's Southern Institute for Medical Plants and Assistant Professor of Agriculture at Southern Baton Rouge. Quote, "This is yet another great and historic day for the Southern University Agricultural Research and Extension Center," McMeans said. "The goal of this program is to provide quality medicine for the citizens of the state of Louisiana through through education, research, and outreach, all of which are included in the mission of the Ag Center. The release of IO, along with our CBD products, will enable us to help patients better manage their medical issues and improve their quality of life."
So wait, they're on the THC and CBD side of the game.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I knew something was out there. I knew something was out there. There had to be something out there, right?
Wow, shout out to Shonda for that one. God damn.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Damn.
Yeah,
Wow.
like I said, I think that there's just a lack of an ecosystem where people can actually have functionality in the business. That's why I said the academic aspect also needs to be included from an agricultural perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Because, well, you can grow cannabis, but you don't even know the basics of farming and agriculture itself. So,
I mean, not to toot my own horn here, Mike, but like, for example, like the terpene deep dives I would do, with the cannabis strain reviews and stuff.
mm-hmm.
We're talking like, things like that. Even that previous article where the guy was talking about, more niche genetics, different terpene profiles and stuff like that. You know what?
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, like, dude, it's about time. I kind of stopped doing the reviews that I was doing because you had this hybridization glut where,
mm-hmm.
People don't like indicas too much. People don't like sativas too much because they're both tilted to one side or the other. So what we do is we're going to start coming up with all these different designer crosses, where now what you have is essentially all of these different strains that might have a different, smell, or they may have a unique smell to them in terms of the terpene profile, or a look in terms of purple, green, oranges, yellows, whatever right? In terms of the color profile. However, they all smoke very similar. And so that was like the argument of the strains, say, over the last few years, is that, well, there's a lot of homogeneity. They all kind of smoke the same. They may smell a little different, look a little different, but it's the same shit. See, so now he's understanding, well, look, we need to actually, go source some old world strain, cross it with like some mid-world, new world stuff, create niche terpene strains and stuff like that to kind of, give some variance to it. Now, if you institutionalize that kind of research, okay, if you institutionalize that type of research, then, and I, and me trying to educate people on it is going based off of a terpene chart, your your sense of smell and your sense of taste, right? I'm trying to go based off our own senses, but if you can actually make it to where you've got a database, for example, of different strains, and you've been able to do actual terpene breakdowns, and the school starts to catalog all this data. Okay, now we're going next level with it. We're going next level with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I just think, you know, I mean, these discussions we have already been having, but people who are new to the channel will probably be like, oh, you know, I can't believe you guys are talking about this. I'm like, well,
go dig in the archives. There's a whole playlist. There's a whole playlist.
Yeah. We've been discussing this.
There's a whole playlist of this.
Yeah, we're practically one of the only channels that actually openly discusses it at the level that we do.
Yeah.
You start bringing in guys like Alonzo Hall. You start talking about insurances, life, you know, life insurances, and adding that into the portfolio of better health and better wellness and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, you start talking about micro transportation. We start talking about, you know, putting cannabis inside drones for delivery purposes, and you know, and
we've modeled out I don't know how many different delivery mechanisms using micromobility, trying to tie all of this stuff in, right? Like I was saying, that's why you guys gotta have to go through the playlists. I need to update them, but there's a robust playlist. Go there. Everything is pretty much broken down, right? I just need to update them. But you dig in those things, you can go back some years, and we've been talking about this shit.
Yeah. Yeah, this. Oh shit, that's wrong. No, it's just that Black people are missing out on a very lucrative industry, and unfortunately, you know, not too many people are informed about this. So we try to do these live streams to keep people abreast on what's going on. Yeah, we try to keep people abreast on what's going on, because if you don't know, you don't know. There's nothing wrong with not knowing, but there's something wrong when you try to reject, you know, the idea that this is a lucrative market. I think that you're solely mistaken. Even, you know, for the truckers, right? Somebody needs to move the logistics on this. You know, this was the first article we covered tonight. You know, this brother has the same name as you.
Haha.
We thought it was you at first.
That's probably when I woke up.
You probably heard us talking, right?
Yeah, yeah. I got up.
It's the perfect name for you too. Your alter ego.
I know, young blood, right? That's good shit.
Yeah, all these young cats are getting. Yeah, he's not too far away from here. Yeah, all these young cats are getting involved in this. Yeah, all these young cats are getting involved in this. I was around there last night. Coincidentally, I was around there last night. Guys are not, you know, guys are trying to get to the money, okay? By any means necessary. And if they have to open up a cannabis business, then so be it. And what's happening in the manosphere is that other channels are not providing you enough substance to see where the opportunities are. And you know, a guy like this, a young cat like this, you know, he's in his early 20s. This is what they're doing. This is what they're getting themselves into.
I mean, these are the areas of opportunity in terms of new industry. Now, I will stand on this shit, okay? And I'm pretty sure you will too, Mike. We are the ones who included cannabis in the fourth industrial revolution. Or am I bullshitting, Mike?
No, you are not.
Okay. So I'm just saying, like, in addition to all the other 4IR industries and technologies, we also told you about this one right here. We've been extolling the virtues and talking about it at length, when I think most would probably consider it a damn taboo subject matter. we're looking at it as an area of opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's just that I think that what Biden plans on doing, I think is really going to put a lot of pressure on some of these other states to start looking at their frameworks now too, saying, well, if we don't have one, maybe we should, because they're looking at California, they're looking at Washington, they're looking at Colorado, and they're like, hey, these guys are, had a multi-billion-dollar profit from this in their first year. If I'm Arkansas, if I'm Mississippi, if I'm Alabama or West Virginia for that matter, I'm probably thinking we could use some of that revenue.
I need to look up what the hemp revenues. We haven't covered hemp. We haven't done hemp in a while.
Yeah.
Right. We used to cover a lot of hemp. Yeah, we used to cover a lot of hemp industry business, and we need to peek into what the earnings were, right? As a crop. Let's look at what hemp is also doing.
Yeah. Yeah, B May says y'all been ahead. They want a relationship though.
wait, what did he say that again? What did he say?
B May said y'all been ahead. They want a relationship though. Yeah, that's very true.
Oh shit.
That's very true, man. There's a lot of cats in here who there's a lot of cats in here, man, who want to get on these these Hollywood Squares sort of Brady Bunch panels, man, have their their face.
Did you just say Hollywood Squares? Oh shit.
Yeah, they look like, if you ever go to some of these panels, they look like Hollywood Squares. You have people's heads all bobbing around and stuff.
Show. Oh man.
If you ever look at some of those panels, that
I already know what you're gonna say, like Lapeef Network.
Anyone name your
that shit be looking like Hollywood man. Squares. When you said that shit, that I literally thought of Lapeef.
Their heads be bobbling around in a square, and they're like, what do you think? Daily Double or something like that.
The Daily. Yo, Hollywood Squares, damn.
It kills me, man, to see them like this, and it's like, yeah, I just can't do it, man. I just can't do it.
It's wild, bro. It's like, damn, man. Like, it's just, there's just too much. It's okay, Mike. We can focus on like negative shit, right? And that be like the focal point of subject matter, right? We could do that, but it's too much other shit out here. Right. There's too many other things that are happening simultaneously, right? And we have to kind of pick and choose where our attention goes. You know what I mean? And so, in our heads, it's always been like, well, right about now, it'd probably be best if our attention went to where opportunity lies. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And we talked about this before, being ahead of the opportunity curve, right? You don't want to be Mr. Johnny come lately. Okay.
Yeah.
You don't want to be Mr. Johnny come lately. You don't want to be the dude who shows up to the party tardy. You know what I mean? Like, you want to know when you catch a Bloomberg clip and somebody mentions something, like a light bulb goes off and you're like, yo, you know what? I was fucking with the Brain Trust on that live stream when they mentioned that. Right? See, so you want to kind of have like that precog, like that foreknowledge. And that's really what this whole shit is about.
But now we're moving beyond fourth industrial. We're moving to the fifth industrial. Fifth and sixth.
Yep. This is true. This is real facts right here.
Yeah.
And we haven't even scratched the surface on this shit right here, bro, to be honest with you. When it comes to like cannabis, hemp, all of the verticals in terms of like markets and different sub industries that hemp and cannabis can serve. Because we didn't even get into like textiles and like the textile side of things, right? Using the materials of the plant for a whole different set of industrial uses. Like that's a whole other part that ain't even touched on yet.
Yeah.
So
I know
I would
somebody's
say,
gonna
yeah,
ask-
fifth industrial. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, I know someone's going to ask, what are you talking about, fifth industrial? Well, fifth industrial is just the relationship between man and the machine itself.
Yep.
The consciousness. There's a sense of consciousness that's going to come from that. How do you relate to your cobot? I think we covered that about the Toyota robots last week.
The robot.
Yeah.
The robot that assists elderly people.
Yeah. And what is the relationship to that and what you're trying to achieve? That part is important. And so anyway, shout out to everyone in the chat, man. I think that I think this has been a really good discussion. I don't see anybody else coming up, so I'll just give my closing thoughts on this. I think that we should pay attention to this at least once a month in terms of the cannabis industry, the business aspect, what social equity programs are successful and which ones are not, and what are we seeing overall with the industry. I think that there's going to be a lot of opportunity from this. You don't have to be a smoker to be involved in this. There's a lot of people who don't smoke or drink and they're involved in the business.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. No, absolutely. And I was just going to say, if, maybe I'll try to discover some new varieties out here and get back into doing some strain reviews. Like I said, for a while, I was just running into the same stuff and I couldn't really differentiate, so I just kind of dropped it for a while, but there's some new things popping up in the shop. So, I'll, take a look and see what we can do. Review something new and different, unique.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you all for joining us, and please hit the like button on your way out. Share the video if possible and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust.